And welcome back to part 45 of Neptunia VIIR, where today we've got a bit of a CPU standoff. We're not allowed to access our goddess forms for kind of a randomly thrown together reason of, oh, we can't because the fakes are suppressing our power somehow. So we've got normal vert versus fake vert, normal noir versus fake noir, you get the picture, but we're not allowed to use our HDD forms, which only serves to drag out this fight. I'm going to pick right now. That's the main thing of this, is that this fight just ends up taking forever because you don't have access to your superpowers, basically. If it's any easier, I'd recommend swapping someone out with Uzume just because it's more variety in the abilities of what you can do. Or have Big Nep in, because Big Nep's very powerful despite not having HDD form. But for the sake of almost symbolism but not quite, I wanted it to be the goddesses versus their fakes. But this fight is 15 minutes long. This fight ends at 15 minutes and like 20 seconds. So you've still got a way to go yet. And it is the only boss of this video, despite its length, because we will be entering the next dungeon after this, but the next dungeon actually doesn't have a boss. It's just got a rather lengthy cutscene at the end, so I decided to not just make this whole part this one boss. But that's the reason why this boss fight wasn't in last part, because it's 15 minutes long. And so it was another part that would just really overstay its welcome if I kept it in. But thankfully it's a bit cooler today, so I've managed to be able to close my windows so you hopefully won't hear every single individual car that passes. I say that knowing full well that it hasn't been too bad, but it still has been annoying. But the main strategy of this fight is the same as the last time you fought the fakes. You just need to pay attention more to Blanc and Vert over Noir and Nep. They're still powerful, and like I said, Nep will be using special attacks more often than anyone else, making her more of a threat. But Blanc's physical focus and Vert's speed matched with her power will make those two bigger threats than Noir and Neptune. So if you can get either Blanc or Vert alongside anyone else while you're at it, try and keep up on it. Just be wary that any elemental resistances that the main party has, their fakes are going to have by default. So Vert's natural resistance to wind is going to apply to fake Vert as well. Also, even Neptune Break's not going to be that great, because I don't think this counts as a boss fight. So I'm not going to get the final slam. Yeah, no. Just like the previous one, because there's 4 of them and not one of them gets a boss health bar, it doesn't count as a boss fight regardless of the fact it evidently is. The main idea I end up going with on this fight is trying to get all of them to go down at around the same time. But if you are struggling, absolutely prioritise fake Blanc or fake Vert just to lower the damage. Probably the easiest to get around and deal with is the fake Noir, because although all of them are definitely a threat, she's the weakest of the 4, I'd say.
I can't believe I'm falling behind. I'll use this.
And what doesn't help is I've yet to unlock those extra skills for the rest of the main party, so the only person who has access to EXEs in this fight is Neptune. Well, I say that, I'm not actually sure if I'm a high enough level to get them anyway, even if I could, but I don't have them for this fight regardless.
No!
Oh god, I'm not sure how I'm going to keep this up for 15 minutes. Oh, well, I say, Capcom recently announced that they're doing another Legacy collection for one of the Mega Man series, which is kind of nice, because it's one of the more niche ones. They're doing the Zero series and the ZX duology. So that's Z1 through 4 and then ZX and ZX Advent, which, although I wasn't the biggest fan of them, like I preferred the X series and the originals to an extent, it's nice to see that they are getting some love as well. Like, I'm appreciating how much love the Mega Man series is getting. And with Mega Man 11 out and about, a lot of people are hoping that because Mega Man 11 was kind of inspired by how well the Legacy collections are, and probably also inspired by how much of a backing Mighty No. 9 got, regardless of how much of a disaster the game ended up being, that people are hoping that they'll do the same for the X series and we'll get an X9, which I'd be down for a modern X game, just because the last 2 was so contentious with the audience, because X7 was such a boring game and X8 was really good, but just no one played it because people didn't like X7, and X6 is one of the worst games I've ever played. Like, it's kind of funny that they split the Legacy Collection in two for X series, because you're really done dirty in the second game. Like, the first one is the 4 good ones, and then the other one is the alright 5th one, a terrible game, a boring game, and then an alright 8th one. Like, yeah, alright, like the first 4 are pretty good. Like, the third game I think was a bit weaker than the original 4, but it was still solid in its own right. Like, this is me trying out HDD Neptune to try and compare the damage, but I think Neptune Break is the better alternative of the two here. I say that, it doesn't do too bad damage. Yeah, 1,275. Having that damage log in the bottom left is probably your best friend in this game, and I don't give it enough credit. It's the same with the whole series. They always keep a damage log there that you can go through and just keep an eye on as it goes. And it's just that extra piece of information gain that you get as you go through can really make the difference, and it's something that is practically universal across all Idea Factory games, which I greatly appreciate. Or all games published by Compile anyway. I'll say that's odd, like when... Because I'm definitely going to cover Death End Request at some point, and I'm definitely going to cover Dragonstar Varnir at some point for different reasons. Dragonstar Varnir because I love the game, Death End Request because I definitely enjoy it, but there's a lot I want to talk about what I didn't enjoy and what I want to see develop now there's a sequel confirmed for it. But like, both of them have some weird things. Like, Dragonstar Varnir doesn't count how long you've been playing it. There isn't a clock monitoring how long you've been playing the game, which I find absurd that a turn-based JRPG that's relatively long doesn't keep count of how long you've been playing it. Or like how Death End Request allows you to save during cutscenes, but also allows you to save after you've locked in the bad ending through a cutscene. like I said, because the Death End Request, it's part of in its name, but there's death ends. There's a lot of decisions where the moment you make them, you lock in getting a bad ending that'll kill you. And all of them except the main one, because there's a lot of them that is as soon as you get them, it's like, well, yep, you got yourself killed, well, that's it, yada yada. They don't let you save. But the main one, right at the end, the one that matters, they absolutely let you save after you've gone past the point of no return for that. Like, the moment you start the cutscene that locks you into the bad ending, if you haven't done the requirements, you can still save. And because you do such a hideous stretch of a dungeon, you get, and you do a lot of hideously long dungeons like that, you get adjusted to using cutscenes as glorified save points.
It is my turn.
And so you'd be forgiven for locking yourself in the bad ending there. Thankfully, Death End Request is a lot shorter than any other JRPG I've played. Like, it's almost as long as South Park Stick of Truth. In fact, I'd almost say it's shorter once you know what you're doing. If you're, when I got the bad endings, I did unfortunately save in it and race through it in NG Plus to get back to it. I was there within 5 hours. Yeah, I skipped all the cutscenes, but I just raced through, ignoring everything, and made sure to just do the requirements for the true ending. Which the requirements for the true ending is do every single side quest in the game. But seriously, like, it's a very short game, but it's kind of why I want to cover it, because it'll definitely be a longish project. It'll still be longer than a lot of other projects I've covered. It'll probably still be longer than Bloodborne and Evil Within in terms of parts, but it will be shorter than Neptunia and FF15. I'm willing to bet on it. But it's still something I want to cover before Death End Request 2 comes out, even though I've got ages yet, because it's like, but like, let's keep in mind, Death End Request 2 has only just been announced. Its trailer shows nothing but concept art. Its trailer also says it's coming to Japan next year. If it's coming to only Japan next year, it's not coming to the West until probably 2021. There's a lot of games I'll have to play before I get to that point. So I do want to keep this YouTube channel going. So I don't do it for any profit, but I love keeping this channel going. I love playing video games and being able to show it to you guys and talk about what I love. And I kind of have to keep it going now that the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated is coming out next year. Because I've made it very clear since almost a word go, the moment SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom is available on PS4 in any regard, I'm Let's Playing it. I'd really be happy if they make it come packaged with the original, because the game's so dirt cheap, there's no reason to not do it. I feel like just stack it on, like have it a part of it, because then, to be honest, I'd Let's Play the original first. to show you what I love about the original before let's playing the remake to show off what I like and about what it does different or what I don't like depending on how it ends up going, because I do have my concerns. Yeah, it is a very early pre-alpha footage, but if you've looked at the footage that they showed off at Gamescom, the game looks ugly, and I mean really ugly. It looks really rough around the edges, and the frame rate was abysmal. It made the game look incredibly slow, and all the levels had their scale like taken down a tiny bit. And I noticed it, that I don't need to compare the footage. I could tell everything was slightly smaller. Like the entire map of the first area they explored was easily about a tenth of the size. At least it felt like a tenth of the size. It really didn't look that big. A lot of the platforms were slightly smaller because of it. But everything was just shrunk down slightly. And I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Who should I fight?
And as I said, everything felt slower, but it's hard to tell what is the game being slower and what is the frame rate being slower.
Smash you to pieces.
And I say that knowing full well that the version I played is the PAL version that runs 10% slower anyway because of PAL TVs only running at 50 Hz. And yet this version they showed at Gamescom still looked slower than what I'd grown up with.
Watch my rumbly and complex technique.
But I don't know, it's still not out for another year yet, so there's a lot still to change. I just hope they take in criticism, because I would hate for something that I hold so close to my heart to feel cheaply thrown together and thrown out. Like, or to have things missing, or random sound effects not exist, or just lots of little things like that just not be there that should. And I will be extremely critical on it if it's not what I want it to be. If it's not honouring the original to its highest degree. Because the original didn't not only look nice for its time, but it was still to the brim with charm. And none of the cutscenes shown in the footage showed any of that charm. It looked extremely generic. They had all these little quirks of animation of how the characters moved and responded. That made each character have a lot of extra charm to make them believable as if they were straight from the cartoon. That this remake footage didn't show any of. And I said, I know, I'm going to keep repeating it, I know it's a very, very early pre-alpha footage that they showed at Gamescom. But it's just made me all the more concerned. Like I mentioned it previously, that one of the main things that concerned me right out the gate was they said they were adding previously removed things from the original release. Stuff that was either just didn't make it in time, or they just didn't feel would work, they're re-adding. But it's just, everything we saw at the Gamescom footage just leaves me with concern. Fear and concern. But that was the only thing I was really paying attention to in Gamescom, if I'm honest. Everything else just felt like it was a waste of time, if I'm honest. Every event this year so far has felt a bit bare-boned. And I know why. Like, a lot of it, companies are holding back because they know the next generation of consoles is coming at the end of next year. So they want to hold off. Like, I know Sony and Microsoft being the big ones, they're both holding off quite heavily. But it still feels like this year's been like the beach episode. Like, it feels like it doesn't really serve a purpose, it's just kinda here. I'm hoping Tokyo Game Show can make amends for that, because Tokyo Game Show doesn't usually let me down. So I'm hoping that will make up for it a little bit, but I don't know. Also, yeah, I've only just noticed, well, I've been lost on my tangent, that at some point I swapped out Net for Uzume. To try and mix it up, I suppose. I mean, if they don't have access to their CPU forms anyway, you might as well use people other than the CPUs on occasion. I just wanted to start with them for the almost symbolism of having them all together.
Who should I fight?
And I think I wanted to test to see if the nulling out of the goddesses only applied to the main four. I think the only annoying thing is that Neptune probably has the most health out of the four fakes. Like, she takes the most of a beating.
Perhaps I'll try my best.
And to be fair, I probably should have kept our Neptune just because of Neptune break, but still.
I'll finish it this turn. My turn. I'll crush you.
You see, I'm desperately trying to get some formation skills together because they naturally do a lot more damage than specials. But I don't seem to be getting much luck.
What shall I do?
There we go, current hardware.
Let's go, Bert. Blonde, as you wish.
So we can't use things like Guardian Force because that's next form only. We can't use their next form specials because they're those ones only as well. It's a bit of a pain in the backside, but the fight's finally over 15 minutes later. Christ. I was really struggling to think of what to talk about. But that being said, we've got a big cutscene coming up, and then we'll be entering our next dungeon. As everyone gets a level up. Literally everyone gets a level up. But now we've got a cutscene where we defeated our fakes.
How's that? All done, you fakers. It's the destiny of fakes at the end of anime and games to never win against the originals. Oh. Sorry, Uzume. I didn't mean it like that. I'm not talking about you, you know.
Yeah, I know. You don't have to sweat the small stuff. It's cool, Nepsi.
But...
Huh. There were so many. You guys must be pretty tough to have defeated them all.
Roasty!
What sort of intentions do you have while coming back to us this time?
So, what are you guys planning to do now that you know the secret of Uzume and this dimension?
You don't even need to ask. We're just gonna go defeat the other Uzume.
Like, is that cool though? If you do that, Zero Dimension is gonna disappear along with Heart Dimension. Then, since Uzume and Umio are living there, them and all the other people will vanish. Poof! Will you feel alright doing that to them?
That can't be!
Come on, are you numbskulls paying attention? This world is with Uzume. If she disappears, it's pretty obvious this place will go too. Man, what a heavy situation, right? If you leave her, Hyperdimension's screwed. If you save your world, Heart Dimension's gone. Game industry is standing at a fork in the road of history right now. What choice are you CPUs gonna make?
You're terrible, Krusty. We couldn't possibly choose. I know. I bet this is the pattern where after your decisions appear, a few seconds later a third option pops up. Ooh, I see. So that means the path to the happy ending is with that third option.
You guys have nothing but games for brains. But you better give your answer soon. If you do nothing, the fusion of the two dimensions will just happen.
Why? Why must the world hunt Uzume so? What has she possibly done to it?
Well, she had it coming. She almost destroyed Hyperdimension once. It's not strange that her actions would come back to haunt her.
What do you mean?
What? You hadn't figured it out yet? You remember those reports Neptunia was gathering, right? Those are about Uzume.
What?
You guys were so slow in catching on. So I tried repairing Uzume and the data. But even then, you guys still don't get it. She did something to gain the hatred of the whole world. It's not weird if that ends up sticking to her as a curse, right? Oh dear, there she goes.
What should we do, Nep? We're going after her, of course. She's already in shock over knowing her real identity, and now learning this, we can't leave her alone in that state.
Kra is such a bitch. There's no other way of putting it. Kra is like... They introduced her in the last game, and you could tell that she was going to be a pain, because she's the reason a lot of things even happened in the last game. But oh my god, she went from really not liking to really hating in this game. Like, I really hated her in this game. But I think that makes her work as a villain, I suppose, but she's just such a bitch. Indeed, my dorsal fin is picking up Uzume's presence. There's no doubt that she's here. Fish as of late are quite amazing. Will you allow me to touch it? A simple request to fulfill, only please be gentle. It's quite delicate. Poke, poke. Oh. Squish, squish, squish. Ah, no, not there. Oh my. Touchy, 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 touch. There is. Oh. Phew, what a lovely touch. Oh, rather a lovely sound. Hey, what are you two doing? I apologize, Noazi. Virtue is a bit of a magician, or maybe more appropriately akin to the office as a technician. I apologize, I couldn't help myself. I too was enchanted by the moaning of such a pretty boy voice. I lost control. Okay, so anyway, there's Uzume. Just a second, these footprints are probably Uzume's. Judging from the direction, she should be just ahead. I hope Uzume isn't thinking of doing anything drastic. Yeah, we have got another one of these dungeons with another different layout. But I really felt for Uzume after that last cutscene. Like, literally, what's been put in front of her, if you didn't really care for the cutscenes or didn't pay attention that much to it. Uzume's two choices is either kill her evil other half, but because it will kill her other half, it will kill the real version of her, and because her heart is directly tied to Heart Dimension, and Zero Dimension is an extension of Heart Dimension, every living being in Heart Dimension and Zero Dimension will die and cease to exist, as both dimensions will collapse, because they are born of Kurome, or the real form of Uzume's heart. However, the other choice is don't defeat Kurome, in which her plan will come into full fruition, which can't be stopped now anyway because the dimensions are already moving. The dimensions will clash and completely flatten Hyperdimension, causing every living being in Hyperdimension to die and be destroyed as Hyperdimension falls into ruins. The only two decisions Uzume has is either die as two dimensions fall apart, or live to see another fight fall apart. No wonder she ran away. No wonder she's panicked and hidden herself away in this place of hell. Because that's not a decision to make at all. That's so awful and cruel. And it's one of the things I was getting at with Act 3, where, like I'd mentioned before, that the Neptunia games do know how to be dark. They do know how to incorporate darker plot elements. This is one of them. That's such a horrible, heartless thing to throw at Uzume because of the crimes of her previous life. Like, they made mention to the fact that those reports that we saw in Act 1 were tying to Uzume. At some point, something happened with Uzume, and it resulted in her actions getting her absolutely despised and pushed aside by the entire population, to such a point where they pretty much did a witch hunt on Uzume. They wanted her dead and out the picture because of how much destruction she inadvertently caused across the entirety of Hyperdimension. The only way she felt to get away with it was to seal herself and make it so history forgot about her. It's why Histoire vaguely remembers her but can't quite pin on it. Because she was forgotten by the history books, she was pushed aside by Histoire. Everything that she's ever remembered has been pushed aside because her nation hated her. And that's what those memos were getting at back in Act 1. If you fill in the blanks, she nearly destroyed Hyperdimension and forced herself to be forgotten out of guilt. And because she was forced herself to be forgotten, no wonder that the Uzume we encounter, it was such an amnesiac. Because of everything being pushed to be forgotten, she doesn't know who she is anymore. She just knows she's a CPU. And now it's all coming back to that. Must be heart-wrenching for her that she's getting the memory back. And what has she got to remember? That she nearly destroyed the place that she loves? She nearly destroyed the world that the people that she now cares about now inhabit and rule? She came about before a goddess known as Uranus, who, before this game, it was assumed that Uranus was the first CPU. Uranus existed, created the world, and then as she died and passed on the flag, she gave it to the four main goddesses we know. They never directly knew Uranus, they never met Uranus, and they were born after she died, but the flag was already passed by the time Uranus died, when these four were created. It's why I've mentioned before that I'd love for them to explore Uranus as a character, to explore what her rule was and how it worked, because it's mentioned before. It's the same in Ultra Dimension. In Ultra Dimension, there was another goddess that similarly decided to step down before Uranus stepped in Ultra Dimension. That being Whiteheart, who represented the Atari, and her Fulton Grace was a reference to the video game crash. But when she regained power, she was nothing but anger because she didn't know what to do with herself, and so had to be taken down in respect. Although it was a respect your elders kind of plot, she had to be stopped because her failings had just led to anger. She overpopulated her own world and her own market, which is a bit of a message towards what the video game industry ended up doing and how it crashed. And everything else, that it started falling apart on her, that Uranus had to take over in Ultra Dimension's version of the events. Because eventually, the four CPUs, when they have passed their prime, which the games have yet to cover, they will pass down their CPU role completely to the candidates. That's why the candidates are there. They're not just there to be the younger sisters, they're there to be the replacements once Neptune, Blanc, Noir and Vert are no longer prepared to do it. There will be a ceremony and it will be handed down to them. As referenced in Noir's incredibly unrealistic fantasy dream where she said she was going to hold a ceremony and pass it to Uni. Eventually it will go to Uni and Uni will be the goddess. And that's probably the thing that I love but hate the most, is that there is a lot of lore in the Neptunia series and they rarely do anything with it. Like, there's a lot in the story that you can learn and work out with, but outside of the main series you don't get any of it. There's nothing covering Uranus other than maybe the odd mention outside of the main series. There's nothing covering Uzume and her adventure past this game. There's nothing covering Atari or Whiteheart even. It's a bit like, I'd love for them to, like, in the 5th game, to really, I'd like to think and like to hope that the reason why the 5th game is taking so long to develop is because they're going to make it a really big chunky game that covers all this. Also, that cut there is because 99% of those enemies there we've encountered before. This was the only new one. But I'd love for them to actually spend some time exploring that. Have an entire arc exploring the history of Uranus. Have an entire arc dedicated to going into all these old ancient ruins or things like that, exploring the history past and finding out why she stood down and stepped out of power and then died before these 4 goddesses could come into play. Have an arc dedicated to Ultra Dimension and how it's grown to develop as a premature version of Hyperdimension that was always a step behind what Hyperdimension was at. See what become of that after all these years. See what become of Uzume, because this game and this tale of Uzume, there's stuff still to work with that they could do in the future. I'm not going to spoil what happens in the rest of this because that's part of the fun, but there's still things to explore with her character and her history that I love to see get covered in a future release. Like, as much as I've loved that the 3rd game introduced a new dimension with a new CPU, rolling planetoon, and then this game did the same thing, I don't want them to introduce a new other goddess in a new other dimension next game. I want them to work with everything they've got with and push it to the greatest it's ever been. The reason why my favourite act in this game is Act 2 is because it takes something that's pre-established and already been explained and does its own story with it. It's a world you already know, just getting more world building and context and exploration.
Very lovely.
Especially because you get some time with each of the 4 goddesses, so you get some time with each of the 4 perspectives as to why their nation is built the way they are, and why they have it built towards the way they are, and why each character loved them. Also, each of the 4 goddesses are absolutely a high enough level to unlock their ultimate skills now. And you're gonna see me not check, because I just forgot. I just assumed they had all their skills, and I just completely forgot. Like, in the 5th game, I know I'm being extremely ambitious and I'm only setting myself up for disappointment here, but I would want 5 acts. The first act, make the whole first act based in Hyperdimension, and just Hyperdimension. Make it a bit cheesy, make it a bit comedic, make it really light-hearted to get people back into it, and it's like, yo, it's the Nep humour, the Nep style, the way it is. Have Act 2 be returning to Ultra Dimension. Like, seeing Plutia, seeing how Pishi's doing, see how the world's developed there, because it's a premature version. Get some time to spend, don't recruit them, but get some time to spend with Ultra Dimensions, Noir, Blanc and Vert, see how they've developed since they've been completely pushed to the sideline as well. Have Plutia join you on your adventures and have a drama go on there, and make the drama tie into the past slightly. Have the plot reference Uranus quite a lot, which, once the plot of whatever it ends up being is wrapped up, ends up resulting in the goddesses saying, when they return the Hyperdimension, saying, well, we should really explore this. We like, what happened to Uranus way back when? And then we have the whole of Act 3 going through all these ancient ruins, maybe back in Hyperdimension, maybe dimension hopping, I don't know. Probably back in Hyperdimension, just because I have to consider budget here. Make it going through a lot of ruins and make it really plot focused, exploring all these different sides of Uranus and getting an understanding of how she built the world and why she made it the way it was before she passed it down to the goddesses. Then have Act 4, maybe have Act 4 that you don't play as the cast that you've played up until that point at all. Jump to Uzume. Completely jump to Uzume and her adventures. And I'll probably talk about this again like in a post video when the ending's been and gone and I can explain my point better. But have the whole 4th act be Uzume's adventures, and have that be whatever 3rd set of environments, since we've already got Hyper and Ultra down here. And then have the 5th act of both sides coming together, because maybe in Uzume's story she discovers something quite frightening whilst covering up her story, whilst going through her story in turn of events. And so in Act 5, everyone comes together to have their big finale. Maybe in Hyperdimension, maybe in a different dimension, or something like that. And then you've had room to breathe, to give each area some time to explore their past. And that's pretty much my whole story, so I'm going to shut up for what is hands down one of my favourite character moments for Uzume. This cutscene was what made me love Uzume as a character, so I don't want to continue interrupting this. I'm just enjoy it.
As my CPU self. Come on, you're too humble for being me. This is when you gotta say, "'Cause I'm the protagonist. Eat that!" Like I would. Ooh, that sounds pretty fun. Hey, how about this? Let's say it together. Ready? 1, 2. 'Cause we're the protagonists. Eat that!
I feel my sanity collapsing. Uzume's more important right now than the Neptunes messing around.
But what can we possibly say to console her? I cannot find the words.
Then please, allow me to go alone. I've been with Uzume for a long time, and as I'm not a CPU, it may be easier for her to listen to me.
Damn it! What the hell is this? In the past, I nearly destroyed Hyperdimension, earned the entire world's hatred, then got sealed away. On top of that, I'm nothing but scraps that broke off from the sealed me. And in the end, I gotta defeat myself, or the 2 dimensions will fuse. But if I disappear, so will the 0 dimension, and me. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to think of anything anymore. Why is it always Uzume? Why is it me? Uzume just wanted to grant everyone's dreams and live happily together. Uzume can't decide. Uzume's a CPU. It's her job to protect everyone in 0 dimension. What does she do? Someone tell her. Someone answer her. No, it hurts. She wants to die. Let her die. She doesn't want to think. Oh, someone save her. Save me. Save her, Umio.
Did you call for me, Uzume?
Umio? Why are you here?
It's not like you to return to your normal speech on your own.
Umio? Umio!
Don't you already know? I would follow you for a lifetime. My deepest wish is to see your dreams come true, and to be next to you when they do. Even if you end up in a nightmare, Uzume, people do eventually wake from nightmares, so please, let's wake up together. Are you all right now?
Yeah, I showed you something real pathetic, but thanks to you, I feel a lot better.
Uzume, if my thoughts are correct, you may be a piece of your conscience that broke away from your soul, infected with delusion, hatred.
I'm my conscience?
Yin and Yang. With all things in the universe, there are these 2 opposite sides. The human mind is no exception. After you left, Krar told us how the reports we found with Girzi were the records of you that were erased from Hyperdimension. It is true that the actions of those who did not think well of you were written there. However, the voices of those who were anxious for you were much larger in volume. You didn't try to destroy the world because of your hatred. You learned how you couldn't control your powers, and for the sake of the world, you willingly chose to be sealed away.
I had no idea the reports contained that.
I cannot know what's held in the memories you've regained, but don't be fooled by them. Memories are ambiguous and fleeting. The passage of time can change your interpretation for better or worse. You mustn't look at the past with disdain.
Uzume, from today onwards, you will be working with this man, on a grassroots publicity campaign.
It's a pleasure to work with you.
Planet Toon's amazing! Uzume is so cute!
I have a favor to ask, everyone. If you see our CPU pulling a pull wagon, please call to her with, Lady Uzume!
Lady Uzume!
Lady Uzume!
I can't move into Planet Toon anymore? No, please, let me live in Planet Toon!
I'm sorry, everyone.
Guess it can't be helped.
Lady Uzume. No. Uzume. Let's make this a wonderful nation.
Lady Uzume's illusion powers went out of control again.
Is there no way to save Uzume?
Lady Uzume's assassination apparently ended in failure.
Again, huh? If we don't do something soon, the nation will be destroyed.
Thank goodness.
She was such a good girl, too. Why did it end up like this?
Grandma, can't we save Uzume?
There she is! It's Uzume!
Uzume! Watch out! Ugh! I'm so glad. You're safe, Uzume. Don't cry. I'm here for you. My deepest wish is to see your dreams come true. And to be with you on the day that they do. So as long as you're safe.
So you truly wish to be sealed. I understand. And I apologize. No matter if it takes tens, hundreds of years, I will find a way to seal your powers. Until then, it will be but a short parting.
I remember it now, Umio. The world was this kind to me.
Wait just a second!
Gah! Nepsi?
Objection! I object to those memories.
We had such a nice mood going. What is the matter so suddenly?
It wasn't sudden. You both tried to let it go by, but there was an important plot point there.
Plot point. Do you mean Histoire?
Not that. It's the words of the gentleman you seem close to in your flashback.
My deepest wish is to see your dreams come true, and to be with you on the day that they do. They're exactly the same as Umio's lines.
This means that Umio equals the man that showed up in the flashback then, right?
Umio protected Uzume and lost his life, but because of the regret and emotions they both had, he reincarnated. I think that's right. That plot could work. Not only that, but it scores high points in a tragic romance from him not being human. This is definitely going to be the plot for my next Rookie Novelist Award entry.
I know our series is prolific, but I never thought we'd see pure love in a game I star in. As a protagonist, how careless of me. At this rate, the only option I have is to roast him and eat him off the main cast. Yeah, it'd be totally unacceptable if, through a fluke, the series goes off the rails and the next game stars a young Umio in some harem title.
Calm down, you guys! Why are you guys here? And how the hell do you know about my flashback?
We came along with Umio, and we were here from the very beginning, actually.
Then, you heard me cry, too?
Yep, we heard it all as clear as day. Oh, and I'm a little late, but here's a handkerchief.
By the way, your flashback was being projected behind you the entire time, Uzume. I mean, I thought the whole heart dimension plot point was confusing and bothersome, but it's pretty entertaining for times like these.
No way!
You got to peek into our minds, so it's fair and square now.
Just kill me!
Have you calmed down somewhat, Uzume?
Yeah, finally. But heart dimension and hyper dimension, Now that I remembered all that, I can't choose one over the other.
Don't worry about that. The protagonist Neptune here has found our third option. Ooh, little me is amazing! Tell us all about it. The other Uzume, oh, that's a mouthful. She's dark and is Uzume's opposite, so for now, I'll call her Kurome Ankokuboshi.
As expected of the same person, even their naming sense is the same.
If she becomes evil, then we could just cancel it out and purify her with share energy, like with Avimojas.
I see. It's true that if the dark powers of negative energy is the cause, then the light powers of share energy should erase it.
But will it be that easy? She's absorbed the entire world's negative energy for decades.
The magnitude of stored energy is way too different. Worst case, it's possible our energy will be erased instead.
But this is the only way we have that could save both dimensions.
What will you do, Uzume?
Sounds good. I'm on board with it. I never shy out of a tough gamble.
Then there's no reason for us not to join in on this plan. But how will we go about it? She's not the kind of opponent we can take head-on.
No, we can do it if it takes place in this world.
How do you mean?
This is literally inside Kurome's heart. If negative energy is accumulated in her soul, then we can just purify this world.
I see. That makes sense then.
Then we're going in, everybody. We'll start purifying from her heart center.
Oh, and just like that, Uzume returns to us. I love that cutscene. I think it does a really good job of seeing the internal struggles that Uzume is going through, while at the same time just telling me why she deserves to be loved. Like, Uzume is one of those characters you just want to hug. But that being said, next time on Neptunia VIIR, we're going to be entering the core of Heart Dimension to try and see if we can nullify the negative energy of Kurome as we try and find our third option. But until then, you guys take care now.